All right. We are live.
How's that?
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit better. There we go. All right. We are here to talk about developer do's and don'ts. And we're going to be putting in the link for you to join in. I'll be going through the socials now and adding the invite link that you can click if you want to be a guest on the broadcast. So we're here in Louisville. Before we get our dinner, we're going to be talking Ask Us Anything. Developers, what do we see as red flags with developers when we're working with them? From the MEP perspective, things not to do, I suppose, and to help you have the best relationship you can with us pesky engineers, as annoying as we might be. So bear with us. I'm going to send some links here in all of our socials so that you can, if you'd like, call in, be a guest, ask questions, or help answer questions. We'd love to see you guys there. And a couple folks will be trying to tag personally to get you on the call if you can. In the meantime, let's see if I can throw in the link profile. Here we go. Going to X first. And there it is, 5 viewers. Hey guys, thanks for joining in. If you're tuning in, boom, if you're a developer, hop on. Ask us questions or tell us, engineers, what gives you red flags as a developer to when you're working with engineers yourself. We're trying to make the community a better place and get commercial real estate in a better state of mind and have it be less confrontational by telling you what kind of things will trigger us as red flags. One thing is if you start off the bat wanting to price cheap, that to us is like, all right, we can work with you, but a lot of times that leads to, in our world, the commercial, the word, I just want a permit set.
Yeah.
And to us, it's a yellow flag, not a red flag. Like we're fine with doing that, but a lot of times people don't understand what that means, what's being reduced from the scope.
Yeah.
When that happens. So I just added a link on Facebook and X if you want to hop in. I'm going to go to LinkedIn, do the same. And click the link if you want to join. Anybody out there can hop in and riff with us. Whether you're a developer, engineer yourself, or a contractor, we're just here trying to riff on the do's and don'ts, red flags, engineers seeing the developer side. All right, so we got 9 people here now. So if, like I said, if you're here listening, go ahead and click if you want to join in, and we'll get started here in a minute. Once I get all these links out there. If you know anybody, add them on X and see if give them an @ I'm going to DM co-founders Nick because I was trying to get him on here just from yesterday's conversation.
Oh, yeah.
He was brought in, so I'm going to hit you on the DMs there, co-founders Nick, see if you want to join us or anybody you guys think would be fun on this conversation. If I can figure out how to do a DM on my computer. How does that work?
Should be right there at the top. Maybe he's got it closed off. You just add him.
Yeah. Go to permit zip. Again, I'm Kenny. I'm with Carter. We're on the Blueprint Tour here in Louisville today and chilling, talking about developer do's and don'ts. Ask us anything. So shoot a comment, question. That co-founder. Hop in if you can.
One of the studies that we found, I think it was somewhere in Japan. You could probably elaborate. I know, where they analyzed construction projects that went within schedule and within budget, and one of, if not the, well, I think top was governmental influence, but one of the top factors that we say was controllable was experience, and not only experience of the contractor and the design team, but also experience of the owner and what they bring to the table and their expectations. It's a big factor.
Yep, absolutely. Expectation. Huge experience counts, of course. So there's a red flag. developers that are chasing the bottom bid because that dollar is the only thing you can make your pro forma work with. And by doing so, you end up hiring people that are not necessarily qualified or experienced in that work. And we've seen it
Yeah.
happen. We're actually dealing with that today with a client who basically has an electrical contractor on the job, and they are clearly haven't done this kind of work. It's a multifamily situation, and little misses along the way.
Mm.
ADA requirement stuff that's kind of generally noted on our plans. Again, the permit only plans, which are light, and they're not gonna detail everything for you in that market.
Yeah.
But then, so you go after that person because they have the lowest number. But you got to ask yourself that question before you hire them. Do they have the experience? Even if you're hiring your engineer, ask, have they designed this before?
Mhm.
Do they have the right spec that you need to protect you during construction? And has your contractor built this kind of thing before? It's a really bad idea. It's a red flag for us engineers when we start seeing contractors come on board that have never done commercial construction in the first place, but
Mm.
let's say a residential person installing a commercial kitchen and they've never done that. I mean, it's a huge, huge red flag. Never take the bottom dollar. Always go for that experience, or your underwriting just doesn't work.
Even if your engineer does have the experience and you beat them down on the price, it's like, what are you missing out, right? Like you
Mhm.
get what you pay for. If they give you price of X and you talk them down to 0.7X, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
What is that 0.3 that you're missing out on, right? And is that going to cost you more in the long run? Because whether or not we want to believe it, I mean, the engineer has a budget as well. The design team has a budget as well that they have to work within. And a lot of times, the lower you beat them down on the price, the closer they get to something like a permit set. And like you mentioned earlier, I don't think folks really remember, or I guess they don't remember. They get the amnesia. They'll ask for a permit set, not really thinking what is a permit set. You mentioned this earlier today with Austin and Sean, is that if it gets you a permit, we've done our job, right?
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of people ask for a permit set, but deep down their expectations are nowhere near a permit set. Now, that's not to say that it needs to be some fully coordinated 3D model thing.
Yeah.
They do expect something in between, right? But if you are going after permit set prices, then expect a permit set. You know, it's like you got to ask yourself, what are you missing out on, right? Because something as simple as a 10-minute conversation with you, Kenny, about a mechanical thing, you know, could mean the difference between 6 figures of HVAC, or no HVAC, just like the job in, you know, one job over in Scott's Addition, right? It was like, that was probably an hour-long conversation that you had with them. And you said, just don't add any open source cooking. That would require a hood, right? And not only did they save a couple $1,000s on design fee for us, they saved probably 6 figures easily of actual mechanical equipment, all from that conversation with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's as frustrating as it is to have an engineer on your team or brought into it. That cost, it seems like it's going nowhere. A lot of times, what they're doing is making sure you don't go down a road that's going to cost a lot more.
Mm.
And so, a lot in our world, like commercial, we see it as a necessary evil, or at least it's perceived that way. It's like, oh, damn it, I have to hire this engineer now. But you know, and I always tell people it's more expensive. It's more than just the fee. Let's say it's 10 grand for your MEPs on a commercial project, some restaurant, whatever. That's just the start of it. That 10 grand is the start of it, because those engineers are now tasked with, by law and ethics, enforcing what they know about the code. So you can't, it's hard to get away with these things that might go. We have a project recently. They have a 20-year-old HVAC piece of equipment in this warehouse, and the level of renovation is so high that they can't reuse it. It's R22 refrigerant, all that kind of stuff. And early on, a contractor just probably, they told the client, the developer, we could probably reuse this.
Mhm.
And so I was able to be like, no, you can't. Like, well, if you hire an engineer, you can't, because the energy code is going to prohibit that equipment from being used with the level of renovation. Well, imagine how far they might have gotten down the road and fix whatever compressor is on it, and next thing you know, somebody enforces it, and you've already spent 20 grand, 30 grand. That's where that experience matters.
Yeah.
Has this person does that? Number one, not paying attention to the qualifications of your professionals, whether that's the contracting team. I mean, for both the contracting team and the design team, and focusing mostly on the bottom dollar. If the bottom dollar doesn't work with the right qualified professional from the builder side and the design side, chances are it's just a bad idea. You need to walk away from it.
And it's not their fault. The programming needs to change, right? They cost what they cost.
Yeah.
Here's a developer do is, you mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of times, especially in the light commercial market, developers will go into this with a little bit of reluctance and frustration, not wanting to hire an engineer in the first place. But if you have to, you might as well make the most of it. And you're buying a service, not a product, right? So if I'm pissed off that I have to spend $5,000 on a product, let's say it's, a MacBook computer, right? And I have to buy a MacBook computer. I'm going to get the same exact MacBook computer that you get, no matter how I feel about it, right? Or how my attitude is going in towards it or my perception of it. I'm going to get the same exact thing because it's a product. But when you hire an engineering service, you're not getting a product, you're getting a service. So I guess like take advantage of it, make the most of it, right? Because you could spend X dollars on an engineer and get a permit set out of it, or you could spend X, probably even the same X dollars on the same engineer and get way more than a permit set on it, just depending on your mindset, your attitude going in it. I'm not saying kiss your engineer's ass or anything, but you go into it just frustrated, just, I just want to do code minimum and get it done, then that's probably what the engineer is going to do, right? Or if you go into it with a little bit of open-mindedness and say, hey, here's what I want, you'd be surprised. I mean, we do this all day. We've done hundreds of jobs, at least dozens of your type of job. It's what we do. So just go into it with an open mind. You're having to pay for their time already. Pick their brain a little bit. You never know what kind of tip they might give you that'll save you a couple $1,000 or six figures even.
Yeah. I had co-founder Nick. I see you liked it, so you're there. Hopefully watching and hearing this, and you can hop in and give us some of your perspectives. You've been endorsed by our last guest yesterday, Austin, as somebody that has a lot to offer. It'd be great to chat with you, or anybody that's here listening right now. We got a few people here tuned in to the do's and don'ts of how to work with your professionals if you're a developer, how to think about the project. One of the things we've been unpacking through the whole blueprint tour, trying to target this toward what would be useful for somebody in the lending and deal making side, so that they get a window into what happens between those OACs. You're going to be told something in that meeting.
Yeah.
And that's going to be vastly different than what actually happens behind the scenes. And there's a lot of decisions made that affect the risk that's exposed, that you're exposed to, particularly that contingency that you've baked into it. And so it's about just like arming you with those tools, and also training our side on the SME subject matter expert, like how to think about your pro forma and our decisions, and linking those two. It's weird that we don't know enough about each other's world. And so we're the MEP nerds, we're the engineers, and we run this business, and we've been doing this for that reason. But one of those things is the experience, for sure. And the red flags for us is somebody that doesn't value that. As soon as I see a contractor brought in that's never done a submittal or doesn't even know what that means, it's like, oh God, wow, shit. Okay, that person was probably the 40% cheaper than everybody else, and there's a reason that's the case. And then suddenly they just expect us to hold your hand, and there it is right there. That person isn't understanding what is and isn't the engineering service, and suddenly you think your engineer is supposed to be walking you through every single question in detail, like an IKEA an IKEA instruction set. And that's not at all what our drawings are, especially if it's a permit set. It's basically enough to get the jurisdiction to understand the scope of what you want to do, and then you build it and you will figure it out. If there's something wrong, it's on you to figure it out. We basically made sure that you had the energy code complied with, generally the equipment and the capacity that you needed for the HVAC, the size of the conductors that you needed to get from A to B, overcurrent protection, all these nerdy, forgive me for getting a little too nerdy there, but just enough to justify this is a legal system. But duct going straight through a giant beam, and it seems obvious and idiotic that that's there. It's going to happen when you ask for a permit set only. You're not paying somebody to go through and make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. As silly as it sounds to say that, that's basically what you're excluding when you say permit set only. You're excluding all of that detailed coordination, even if it seems obvious. And so if you have an expectation of more, you be prepared to pay more. And when I say more, I mean 3 times or more. It's no small amount. A coordination set for just one trade of mechanical may be as much as the full MEP engineering permit set. So expectations. When we get the sense that your expectations of services are off, that's another little red flag. We're just like, okay, we'd rather not go down that road as a professional. It's going to lead to a problem for us.
Yeah, us being more familiar with their just whole portfolio and how they're underwriting it and pricing it is good. I don't know if that's something that we need to be more proactive about or they do, but I do know on the jobs we've had where the contract or the developer going in was just like, look, honestly, this is just like a budget type of thing, or this is how much I'm looking to spend, or these are my expectations for the tenants. It's like, yeah, I know they're going to be hot in bitch in August, and that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Like that one job, I think they said that. And it was like, whatever, we expect that, right? Or if the expectation is, I never want to get a call about someone being uncomfortable. Like, what are the expectations? And a lot of times those are tied to money. I don't like talking about, like, who wants on the phone talking to their engineers and say, look, I don't have money for X, Y, or Z, or whatever it is, right? But we're going to design something that we think is the best system or code minimum, or meets just like a baseline expectation, and it's not going to match up with you. And then 6 months are going to go down, or 6 months are going to go by. Then we're going to have to change it, and you're going to get mad because we're going to change orders. It's like, if we can be honest about our expectations up front, we can solve a lot of these issues.
Yeah, for sure. We again, if you're listening in, we got 17 people going on 20 now. So join us, join the conversation. If you're a developer, let us know what you see as red flags for your MEPs. That'd be great for us to learn and teach. And what do you see as good things and bad things? A green flag for us is when somebody appreciates and understands the professional cost. I know I don't mean to say like, oh, respect us engineers, but like a lot of green flags will be, yeah, I understand that this is $1,000 just to understand where I'm sitting, but I really need that answer. And we were talking about today with the life safety folks we had in for the podcast on the episode that I think an architect and a life safety professional should be on every project during that planning stage, because you'd be surprised how much that life safety professional touches every discipline similarly to an architect. That architect is not in charge of all of these fire. They can't possibly be in charge of smoke control systems that might be applying, or the material storage or hazardous materials, all of these crazy applications of things that you may never find out until you basically are already built, and then you get the comment or the inspection, and now suddenly you got this $2 million problem on your hands. So that life safety professional, here's a green flag. Somebody that hears what I'm saying and says, sure, let me put them up hourly.
Yeah.
I trust this person on my every single project hourly. I hear what you're saying. I need that person there, because that's going to be the difference between $2 million and $40,000 in your construction, all based on what you and the architect are deciding what you want to store inside of a building. Or, these decisions you don't understand, that the architect's not responsible for tracking all of that. They're going to maybe even not know when to call that person in. That might be your electrical engineer being like, hey, hazardous materials, we need to know what these categories are. And so green flag is somebody that's just very quick to understand and understand where our place is in this really nerdy world. As annoying as engineers can be in construction, we get it. We have our we have our strengths, we have our weaknesses, but we're basically fucking building lawyers. We read the shit out of the code. We know what is in there, so detailed, and we need to be there, especially if you have a jurisdiction that's light on review. That's where you're more than likely to get to construction and find something that way too late. Some third-party inspector might come in and find something that your building authority didn't catch on permitting, and it still doesn't matter if they didn't catch it at the review stage. You're still required as a design and a build team to have those things dealt with. And when it comes to like a smoke control system that maybe was missed, or atriums, this is all common for atriums we were talking about. Smoke purging systems or whatever those are in atriums are required, and they lead to giant fans. They're very expensive fans. You can pay a life safety professional to do a modeling for that for 30 grand, or buy the $300,000 worth of giant fans. But that $30,000 of modeling saves you that money. It's really hard to understand why we exist in this world. And it's basically, especially engineering, we exist to think about the stuff that's never really installed physically. It's like thinking about what needs to be installed, not necessarily how it gets installed in detail. It's about making decisions of what has to exist, not exactly how it gets built. And that's a big miss. And that's a green flag when somebody starts to understand where the engineer has a place, instead of mechanical engineering, instead of confusing mechanical engineering with duct layouts, for example. It's common. Mechanical engineering is very, very little of what we think about is the actual duct sizing and layout. That's something you can teach in a day. So, Austin, here he is. We're up to 20 now. Austin, I tried to get your co-founder Nick in here, and he saw the comment. I don't know if he's gonna hop in or not.
Real quick, we talk a lot about the difference between design bid build and design build, and I think the more that we do this, we're kind of leaning towards design build. I think everyone's interests are more aligned in design build, and I think that an important part of design build that we're missing here is, obviously the developer starts with having a GC that he trusts, right, and then the GC either hires the design team directly or they bid it out to the subs, and the subs hire their own design team. Let's say we're in a world where the GC just hires one firm, right? Developer hires GC, GC hires us. Well, why does that work so smoothly, right? Why are everyone's interests aligned? I think a big part of it is because those hard conversations have already been had, right? Like the developers already had those conversations with the GC about this is what my budget is, right?
Yeah.
Where they might not, whether it's they don't feel comfortable, they don't know how, or they don't think it's necessary to have those conversations with us, right? They'll have them with the GC. It's like that's at the forefront of everyone's minds at that part of it's like, okay, what's your budget, right? Like how much are we going to spend here? Like what am I looking to spend, right? Like the developer is not going to ask us that probably because we don't know, So by the time the GC hires us, they can say, somebody like a Evans Construction or Urban Core or ML Bell, whoever it is, they say, look, guys, this is kind of what the budget is, right? It's this, or it's mid-grade or class 1 or whatever, right? And then we can go into it with a better understanding. And just that conversation isn't happening when the architect hires us directly, because maybe those conversations haven't been had yet.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest, maybe a green flag for a developer, I guess on the other side of that equation is somebody who understand the engineers that do understand those costs or how to ask those right questions about like an awareness of their decisions being connected to something that has to work from a business like modeling perspective.
Yeah.
That while we sit there and do HVAC models and life safety calculations and life safety models on the performance-based design stuff, the same thing happens in terms of design of the project itself, that the developers and the people putting this together have a financial model of here's what I can afford for construction, here's what the dollar per square foot or whatever things they are, here's what I'm assuming the general construction cost would be, and that there's a contractor they've worked with to get to that number, and you show up as the engineer and you're given these inputs, but you're not really you're just calculating based on the inputs being given instead of like starting with, am I aware of what's about to happen and how this may or may not blow the budget out of water? We've tried to be better at that. Just say, okay, I don't know what your financial model looks like, but I can tell you what you just asked for is probably the most expensive possible thing you could have asked for.
Yeah.
HVAC. Do you really want to pay me 20 grand to go down that road just so you can value engineer it? Or should you maybe, are there things we can tweak about the programming and the inputs so that I can get you a cheaper system?
What did he say on the call this morning? You were saying Corvette, and he's like, maybe Mustang.
Yeah, he said Mustang.
That's a good way. It's like we might not know what it costs, but we know based on their functionality that's going to be somewhat proportional to cost. And it's like you're looking for like a bicycle, so it's going to get you to the store.
Yeah.
You want a Honda Civic, or you want an i8, right? Like where are you at? I think most people are probably like Honda Civic, and that's tough because, middle of the road depends, right?
Yeah. That's expectations in HVAC. Y'all may not know this, but HVAC load calcs are basically a giant guess. It's a giant guess. Don't let anybody else can tell you otherwise. They are massive, complicated guesses. We're guessing that you may have maybe 100 people in this space, and they might dance and party. They're not going to dance and party. Oh, they're going to stand at a cocktail. All right, cool. Oh, yeah, they're going to be chill. Are there older people? Okay. Are they going to congregate during the summer at peak season? Is it going to be only in the evenings that they dance and party? Because if so, the sun's not a contributing factor. Or will there maybe be something that happens during peak at noon in August in this space with those people dancing and partying? All these are just total guesses.
It's insurance, right? I mean, like, why would you pay more? You pay more of a premium for an insurance for what? More protection, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whether you got like, I don't know, I'm not insurance, but if you got like $20,000 protection on your vehicle versus 40 or whatever, like you're saying, if I get into a bigger accident or however that works, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're buying down that risk.
Yeah. And engineers, we're not the best at communicating and understanding how to, I don't know, we're just weird folks. We're just weird birds. We didn't think we'd ever have to talk to people in the world at all. We just thought we could sit behind a computer and do these calcs. But that's not how consulting works, and that's a challenge in the engineering community to get that out of the consultant. But further than that, we don't learn. We get engineering econ, right? Like one class on
Yeah.
economics. We learn what a balance sheet is, a P&L, like just really at the highest level, not even in the practical application of it, just so you can
Yeah.
pass an exam. So the idea of what a cap rate even is, and what a pro forma is, and how that works, and what your contingency is. That this podcast is about helping engineers understand that, but also helping developers understand how little we understand about those things, and so that maybe we have better consulting for you in the industry when you're putting your deals together,
Hmm.
and better communication between the engineers' decisions and the builders' decisions. But that's why, if you're listening, let us know where you are and how you hire engineers when you have to, necessary evil, or, or if you're an architect, we'd love to. I saw somebody earlier today saying something I comment on. I hope she's hops in here today. She's an architect. But other green flags or red flags that you can think of. Anybody out there, let us know. There's 25 folks out here now. Let us know. What do you think? Red flags for a client, maybe just general client red flags in this industry.
Me?
Yeah.
I think a big one, I kind of touched on it earlier, but just comes to mind. You get out of it what you put into it. And that sounds so cheesy, but you know, if you're having to pay for these folks anyway, take advantage of them, you know, for real. I mean, sometimes it's so hard for us to remember, like if we get a proposal or a contract for a permit set, I don't know about you, Kenny, but like for me, I have to almost remind myself not to maybe go the extra mile or do something, right? That's just in our in our nature, I think, to just go that extra mile, and whether or not it might seem like it, right? Because you get the drawings and something's wrong or not coordinating. You're like, these fucking engineers didn't coordinate this. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of what we've been thinking about for you, you know, with lead times, especially with COVID and everything being so crazy. So, yeah, I think just going into it with an open mind and remembering that, you know, we're all professionals here. I'm not saying that you got to kiss ass or anything, but you get out of it what you put into it. Your engineers, at least I hope you're working with engineers, we're creative problem solvers. We sometimes can't help ourselves but to try and solve the problem. So, yeah, just try to hire somebody that you trust. You know, don't beat them up on price too much. Don't let them take advantage of you, of course, but just you really get out of it what you put into it.
Maryland at Maryland Modinger. So she's an architect, made an awesome post. I just DM'd her to see if she could hop into. That'd be cool to get her on here. She's an architect and had an awesome post earlier today. If you know anybody that could be cool in this conversation, let us know.
I want to hear some. I want a developer to jump in and tell us some engineer green or red flags. Firing off those DMs over there.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to get some folks that I saw earlier today. We were podcasting earlier, so I was hoping to give everybody a little more notice, but we've been busy with other episodes, the stuff that we're the long form that we're releasing. But while we're here in Kentucky, Louisville, we decided we'd do a couple live Ask Us Anythings. So that being said, don't forget, ask us anything. We are also here as engineers generally. If you have questions, I mean, whatever. Let's say you're analyzing a deal and you have something that you want us to. You're like, hey, I got this warehouse I'm looking at. I want to put church in or whatever it is. We've done tons and tons and tons, especially in the multifam, mixed use, and like commercial markets. You know, both Carter and I are licensed professional engineers, nerds, professional nerds.
Yeah.
And
The state has officially deemed that we are nerds.
yeah, we're legal nerds, and so there's 27 of y'all. So one of y'all has got to be able to have the bravery to jump in. If you're not, though, I feel you, because the other day I was watching somebody's live and they're inviting people to come in, and my heart was racing just thinking about jumping in. I'm like, I don't know, should I do it? I don't know. And I freaked out.
Yeah.
And I DM'd him later. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. The link is in the comments in X, and you see it on this little chat thing, so you can hop in, click that thing. We can bring you on as a guest and just have a conversation. Doesn't matter where it goes. We're generally talking about do's and don'ts, red and green construction, whether you're a developer or a contractor or just curious. I mean, shoot, dude, what if you're just into real estate, you haven't made the jump yet, you just want to ask questions? We've done tons and tons of jobs, and we're in and around the commercial construction. We work directly with developers. I'm the founder of Permit Zip, so there's a little bit of business knowledge there. We can talk about what it's like. Boston seeing his tweets earlier talking about crazy cash flows.
Yeah.
You know, the huge checks that come and go, and it's just insane.
Yeah.
Red flag.
Oh shit.
Payment terms.
Yeah. Pay your bills, people.
Yeah, yeah. Come on, man. If you're going to hire a professional, be prepared to pay that professional, and don't make it contingent on being paid, or don't make it contingent on your closing.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you wouldn't ever put somebody as a tenant in your building and just wait until they're paid to pay you, right? That immediately starts an eviction process. And we have our team and our salaries to pay, and that has to happen every 2 weeks. It costs money, and if the cash flow is delayed, then we end up having to make draws on our own other capital structure. You know what? And if it gets tight enough, you have to get more and more expensive money, or do other things like from the partners to put in and to keep things going.
Yeah.
And that's just a precarious situation to put your professional in. And it's weird how normalized I think it is that developers and contractors have been like, well, once we haven't really closed or we haven't been paid yet, but we'll pay you.
Yeah.
It's like, really? We've been doing this work for 30 to 60 days, sometimes up to 60 days before an invoice comes out, right? And then we send it. So we've already been paying those salaries for that time for that work. And then there's usually a 30-day, payment term, depending on who you're working with and what relationship, maybe 90-day if you really got a solid payment agreement. But then to have that go overdue, and then a late fee, and then to ask for that late fee to be waived.
Hey, you know what's crazy?
Are you kidding me?
If somebody thinks we messed up the drawings, they'll be in the field just like shit talking.
Yeah.
We'll start shit talking people that don't pay their bills on time. Why can't we do it?
Hey, man, it should. You gotta pay your bills. If you're not able to hire the professional, or a contractor even, and this just don't do it, man.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing the deal. Or I mean, I've had people ask, can we pay you once we close? I've said no. Like, if you ask me that question, I will say no. So don't go under contract where the terms are written into the contract that it's due within 30 days, and then tell me that somehow I'm supposed to buy into this weird thing.
It's worth asking.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't hurt to, worst they can do is say no. You can always ask a professional. And if they say no, which they probably will, then okay, so be it. At least you asked. But don't put them in a situation to where you just kind of like ignore the terms in the contract that was signed, and then just try to make it be, well, we haven't closed yet, or we're waiting to be paid.
Yeah.
Well, what the hell? You want me to tell the employees that I'm waiting to be paid for your payroll? Then you're not going to have an engineer on staff to even provide the services. That's a huge red flag for us. As soon as that starts to happen, because this happened to us today. We had somebody that's 10 days over, and we sent an invoice later, and then he's like, "Why are you sending me this invoice for a change, this or that?" Because he's like, you're challenging that you got an invoice for some change, which is one thing. But to do that while also having 10 days overdue is kind of like, man, it's just apparently some developers and in this industry that's normalized that.
Yeah.
If you disagree and there's a reason that needs to be the structure in this industry, let us know. But I don't think any bank would ever accept those kind of terms.
No. Everyone here has got at least a mortgage or rent that they pay for where they live. And try calling your bank or your landlord or whoever, your property manager, and say, "Look, I know it's the 1st, but I get paid on the 8th. So can I just like pay you?"
Yeah.
Well, they're going to say, "No, that's okay. Well, I'll do a late fee, and if you keep doing that, I'm going to kick you out or take your house."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does happen to landlords. You can speak to this, what that's like to go through that process. I'm sure different states are different for eviction process, but there are people that do and don't pay on time. There are different people with different financial habits, and it's weird that this industry has blurred the line between good and bad financial habits by allowing pay when paid to be normalized. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Because everybody's supposed to be okay with that idea. Our favorite clients, the green flag, are the people that pay before they're paid, which, by the way, is what's supposed to happen in our contracts, at least with PermitZip. We don't say we agree to pay when paid. AIA, if anybody is an architect, has any connections with AIA right now, at least 28 people listening, you let them know that Kenny Schultz from PermitZip has a major problem with the fact that they've normalized pay when pay into the actual master contracts of all of construction. It's ridiculous that we should be okay with that. Absolutely insane. And if you're going to do that, at least demand some level of underwriting. Like, if you want me to accept that, what if you default? Give me your car or asset underneath that, the way every other normal person in this universe handles debt.
Yeah, and the reason that that would make you go, "Ooh, I want to do that," is exactly how we feel. You know, it's like, well, what if they take my car? And here we
Yeah.
are thinking, well, what if we don't ever get paid?
Yeah.
Or it's like 2
And
years
that
from now that we
happens.
get paid.
Yeah, or two. Yeah, exactly. And it ends up being forever.
Yeah.
So we're in the light commercial, so we refuse any contract that comes down that way. It's not worth a $3,000 contract going under pay when paid. Now, maybe at the larger level, anybody out there can speak to this. If you're talking about millions of dollars of fees or something, then maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
I would argue there's even less of a reason to lend that much money without underwriting. You need it to be a secured loan. So essentially what AIA has done with that contract language is normalizing that everybody should be getting unsecured loans.
Interest free.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether or not you have a good financial payment history,
Yep.
interest-free, unsecured debt, which is that all the subcontracting just happens. Also, on top of that, there's retainage, which I'm not a subcontractor, so I don't understand that concept. But apparently, that's a way to kind of back charge whatever they take a 10% retainage. But somebody tried to pull that with us as a professional service. It's like, what are you talking about? It doesn't make sense.
It's an unsecured loan. That sounds like every lender or every borrower's dream.
Yeah,
Unsecured loans have high interest rates because they're unsecured.
yeah, yeah, exactly. If you want
Yeah.
to do that, it should be normalized that it should be expensive to have that.
Yeah.
Well, fine. Here, my $30,000 fee now will be at some 12% interest, which I think is the point that it starts to be
Yeah,
regulated.
illegal. Or,
Once you
yeah.
go over 12%, I believe it becomes like a regulated loan shark type loan. But something in the AIA needs to really address that. I don't know if I'm speaking on a pedestal by myself here, but I can only imagine if every subcontractor feels that pain of just being
Yeah.
subject to, in order to even have my living, I have to just be okay with everybody telling me, well, that's what the industry does. I had people tell me that
Yeah.
before.
And it's easier it's more difficult for us because we're providing a service, in these documents. It's like we really kind of lose our leverage as time goes on. Whereas somebody like a contractor that's installing a physical thing, what's it called? Lean, over it where they can go take, like, if you're a mechanical contractor installing a piece of equipment and you don't get paid, you still own that piece of equipment and you can go get it. You've seen videos of people busting up stuff they've built. And whether or not that's right or wrong is a different conversation. But,
Yeah.
as the time goes on, especially once they get permits and inspections are rolling, as time goes on, they need us less and less, and we lose that leverage, especially once they're CO'd. We have zero way of having any leverage to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have the equipment that's not necessarily been given to them until the end of the payment on site that we can deal with. And the best we can do is make a claim and send it to collections or something. Or at the end of the line, hold up something. Just be like, okay, well, our contracts do say that. It's like, if you're overdue, then we retain the right to completely stop all services. Why would we continue to do services? So major red flag. Now, maybe that's a red flag to you as a developer that an engineer has a problem with that, but I would argue that that's a brighter red flag on our side. To have an issue with somebody insisting that there's some level of credit worthiness a part of this loan if you want to make that loan. To say that you don't want to have credit worthiness, to me, is even a bigger red flag, just fucking flying out loud.
Especially from the developer perspective, because they're very, very familiar with the landlord-tenant type of relationship. Like, that's the whole point of what they do. I mean, they're not a developer unless they have tenants that pay on time, right? Okay, maybe an architect, sure, right? But somebody that's a developer or owner, come on, that's like at the very baseline on what you do. Your tenants pay their bills and they pay them on time.
Yeah. So let us know if you vibe with that, or if you take exception to that. Our perspective is just from the service provider, so maybe there's a reason.
Yeah.
In my mind, the only thing I can reason is that AIA structured it that way to encourage the growth of architecture firms, because a lot of architects are asked to be the prime. In order to get the work, the developer will insist that this all goes through you because they want the contract and the lawsuit to flow through that one chain. And so, which is a lot to ask the architect, that kind of risk. So their fees should go way through the roof if they're going to be expected to behave as a prime. I think that it should be way higher. But that aside, now, if that's the expectation from the developer side, because they want to consolidate risk, then the architect to do that has to be able to subcontract, which means in order to do that, you have to get $50,000 per consultant of services that you're going to have to just borrow when you get that invoice and then say, I'll pay you when I get paid and pass that through. But that's not logical, at least from a pure risk and underwriting perspective. If you're a banker, you would never lend that way. And so I don't think I don't think we should normalize that the trades and the subconsultants should just be subject to inheriting that ridiculous lack of underwriting of unsecured debt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with it, pay when paid, as long as I got an asset that if at some point, 1 year or something, I get to come after that asset and it's rightfully mine,
Yeah.
then I would consider it. Pay when paid up to a certain deadline. All right, with some underwriting and securities. Okay, sure.
I mean, I get it from the architect's perspective, from that lens. You just said if it's $1 million job, the architect probably doesn't have all that money sitting in the bank to pay all the subconsultants. They're depending on the developer to pay them. Again, you signed a contract. You should be You are responsible for paying your subconsultants, subcontractors that you signed a contract with. But from their perspective, it's like, shit, I don't have this money.
Yeah.
I need them to pay me to pay you, and it's like not really their fault. It's just like a standard, I guess, that needs to be changed. It's ridiculous. I mean, I get the whole like architect, being the prime and handling all the subconsultants, but the payment terms should be just like direct with the developer. Why is the architect taking on that risk?
Yeah. I think it's just ideal for the developer side. Let us know if you're a developer that you consolidate the risk in one point, that it just goes through there, it flows through there. When a claim is made, it goes to that architect who has to pass it through to their sub trade and bring them into this. Mostly to do with insurance and risk management in the industry, I guess. And then that the architects have given this language in the contracts to do paid when paid. I think the GCs are very similar. Like their trade contractors are also in that situation where they hire paid when paid. So if you're a GC, let us know. I mean, we're not trying to completely dismantle the industry, but you got to acknowledge that it's fucking crazy that an engineering firm might have a $150,000 fee that they just start working on.
Yeah.
And they might produce $30,000 of that before an invoice goes out, and then that becomes late while we're also working on the next $30,000. Now we're at like a 50% completion, and we send that second invoice, and that first one hasn't been paid, and then we're still kind of obliged. And we're getting to a higher and higher exposure of all this work that we've done.
Yep.
And somebody's like, I don't know. Yeah, developer can't close. They're not closing. Oh, okay. Well, sorry, but my contract's with you, not the developer.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do I do? Do you got a Tesla sitting around I could have? What am I going to get in exchange other than you? I'm sorry. That's not, I'm sorry isn't a $100,000 check. And so I don't know what to do with that. I would love to have that conversation with AA to get the perspective of what kind of damage that might cause to the industry.
Yeah.
But at least put it in the damn contract as a standard option. Whatever that standard form is that they have, when you go buy a house, you have all these standard options in the contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Like put it there so that somebody has to actually not select it when they want to go under contract with you. Like, I want an secured or unsecured. There you go, AA. Put in the freaking language that you want to engage with a secured or unsecured, and force somebody to ask for an unsecured arrangement, which would make it a very difficult thing to do.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Some architects could speak to this, but there's going to be somebody that does it, that's okay with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like people asking us to remove limitation of liability or whatever it is. It's like, we say no, sure, somebody's going to say yes, So, but again, if that's what you're looking for, right, somebody just to completely mitigate all of your risk and increase the exposure that they're subject to, then you got to ask yourself, is that really somebody you want to work with?
Yeah. So I guess that would be a yellow flag for us, for developers, is somebody who, did I put the comment here? Yeah, I did. Somebody who, you said limitation of liability.
Yeah.
It's not a red flag. We understand why you would ask it to be removed, but we're in the light commercial world. And so when our fee is $4,000, that limitation of liability is the reason it's only $4,000.
Yeah.
It's because at worst we're on the hook for $4,000. You kidding me? Like, especially when you're asking for a permit set only, and the services are extremely limited, and we can only do but so much thinking. And the people in that market are a mixed bag of people that do and don't have experience versus, let's say, hospitals, where nobody does a hospital unless they've done hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe those fees are also astronomically higher relative to our industry. And so when you're in light commercial and you see a limitation liability, and you want that waived, like for us, we just say no. We'd rather not do it.
Yeah, it's so close to being like an at cost thing
Yeah.
that it's like
Yeah.
it's not worth it. You know, it's like what is that fee comprised of? Or I guess what is the job? What is the effort comprised of? Right, it's comprised of the employees' time, the stamping engineer records risk, the company's risk,
Mm-hmm.
and then all the other things, right? And those all the other things with the limitation of liability kind of helps, pack down a little bit, right? Like all the things that could go wrong or whatever that we could get sued for, that's not even our fault, you know? If you're asking for the limitation of liability to be removed, you're basically getting that fee representing something that looks pretty much just like the hours it takes to cover the job.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and then we always go. It's always underwater for us ultimately for those, and we are specifically as PermitZip wanting to make engineers accessible in the small project market on purpose. So we know in these things it's $4,000. We're going to not make a ton of money. Most of the time we end up losing or breaking even on them. But that's just so that we can provide that resource in an otherwise overlooked market. And engineers don't want to. Like I'll say what no other engineer will tell you, because they're going to say they love this work because they want your next Manhattan job, high rise. But not a single engineer in the world wants your fucking light commercial work.
Yeah.
We are approaching engineering differently because we are looking at the business and how can we scale, and those other making it interesting for engineers and attracting that kind of talent for those reasons. But the work itself is extremely simple. And so when we're getting beat up over like $4,000 being too much on some light commercial thing, and we already are like, are you kidding me? I mean, we could just not do it. Then it's just not going to be there. We're trying to solve that problem at PermaZip and make it accessible, make it more fun, and train about consulting, train about get people that want to do the consulting and the soft skills, and make it about the people and relationships, because the engineering itself is extremely simple. Some of the restaurant stuff gets more complicated. So for us, recruiting people that want to work here for the engineering is difficult, because that's the problem with the market is engineers generally don't really want to be MEP engineers right off the bat. They don't go to school for it. And then the light commercial market on top of that is even less desirable.
Yeah.
So here we try to make it more about the people, the relationships, the consulting skills you get for our engineers, and make it about that and, relationship side of things. But when we're, a red flag is that when we're off the bat being told $4,000 is too much, and we want to remove the limitation liability, these are definitely starting to become yellow flags at least. And then invariably, if we have somebody that pushes the fee down, we want to work with them and help them out. It ends up being no good deed goes unpunished. Expectations are out of whack, because let's say we agree to get it down to $3,000. That person usually thinks they don't have much experience. They don't really understand what we do. And they have this expectation. The drawings are supposed to be an IKEA handbook of extremely detailed information.
Yep.
And then they're just really upset the whole time.
Yeah, they got a worse case of the amnesia, right? Like the more you beat the price down, you're asking for, we've been talking about this, like you ask for a permit set, it's like, okay, the permit set's going to be X, right? Whereas a non-permit set might be 1.5, 2X or whatever it is, right? You get the fee, you're happy with it, you get the permit set, and then 6 months go by and it's like all these things on the drawings aren't there, and you get that amnesia, like you forgot you asked for a permit set, right? And it makes you think, it's like, should we even be saying yes to that? Especially if it's somebody we've never worked with, right? If it's somebody we've got a history with, relationship with, and we trust, and they know what it is that they're asking for, then maybe we agree to it.
Our ideal client at PermitZip isn't necessarily, I know we're marketing to make it accessible in this light commercial small project. It's not necessarily the first time home buyer version, though, the first brick and mortar. It's maybe the GC that's doing them, that has experience, understands what the engineer is, or maybe the person with a portfolio and has a lot of turnover in their strip malls or whatever that needs that access to scalable engineering services there, that they understand what the cost is, and that it's really the last of their concern. It's more about, hey, I need somebody who's been here, done this, the fee $3,000, $4,000, I don't really care. I mean, they see that not having it is going to cause 3 months of delay in construction because they've been there. That's the person we're working to serve. And it's not to say we want to exclude the first time, I call it the first time home buyer, people, the first brick and mortar, the first and only brick and mortar they're going to do. That person is just, expectations are invariably going to be out of whack, which is, if you're in the wedding industry, I guess, is I would imagine every single client, every single time.
Yeah.
It's their first, second, third, fourth, or fifth wedding, depending.
Oof.
Right. But especially if it's their first, it's like everything has to be perfect. Everything's too expensive. And if you're going to spend any money, let's say a photographer is $2,000, like say, insane. I can't believe it's $2,000. This is ridiculous. and then you finally agree to pay it, and then that photographer maybe normally charges $6,000 trying to help you out,
Yeah.
and then there's no good deed that goes unpunished. Now they're seen as being like totally annoying. I can't believe you didn't take this picture. All the expectations are out of whack, but it's like, well, you only had a third of the money to pay me, so I can't have 2 other photographers on site with you. I'm gonna miss shots. I'm only one person, but it's still $2,000 because I'm good as shit.
Yeah.
I'm the only person that get at least the shots I got for you here.
Yeah.
Same thing for engineering in that light commercial market. There's very few options, and we want to work with people that are cool. Kind of got it figured out, scale, or somebody who maybe can do it next month. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. That's a good example, but it's even worse for us. I mean, of course, we can't compare ourselves to photographers, but at least they have something that they can go off of. There might be something missing, but they have something there. What we do is so abstract. It's like so behind the scenes that people don't know the decisions that we are making that are helping them.
Yeah.
It probably is on the paper, right? But it's probably not going to translate directly to you seeing value from it, which is why I think what Austin's doing with the performance-based approach is interesting, right? Because
a different Austin. We got Austin Linney, who's our friend in Pittsburgh. But Austin today, our guest, is a fire protection engineer.
Fire protection-based engineering.
Performance-based fire protection engineering, I think.
Yeah. So they take the performance-based method to the code. So that, not to get too nerdy, but there's a prescriptive method and then the performance-based method. And I think that what he's doing is really underrated. And it's nice because you can see the value, right? Because a lot of times the prescriptive approach in the code is probably going to lead to a more expensive equipment cost and installation costs, right? Because it's like a worst case type of scenario.
Yeah.
Now, somebody doing a performance-based design approach, that person's going to cost more, but they're probably going to be able to get your equipment cost from $1 million down to $400,000, right? So you can clearly see if that person costs $60,000 to hire, it's easy to say, well, look, the prescriptive method is going to cost me $1 million in equipment. This person costs 60, but they're saving me 600.
Yeah.
That's net of 540.
And it's tough. Another red flag for us is somebody who might ask for a study to be done with the expectation the study will produce a result, and not prepared for the idea that the study, it will still cost the same money. If it produces a negative result, it still might be $10,000 to be told you can't do that. That is a little bit. It's hard to say as a red flag, but it happens. We've had projects where we were hired to do mechanical permits, and we spent all the time in our fee to determine you don't need a permit, but we had to study the equipment, do the code, do this whatever, and look at the existing conditions and say, honestly, if you just change the fresh air damper, boom. It's a legal design. You don't got to touch anything. And we never got paid for it because there was no perception. There was value there. But we still spent every bit of 15 hours making that one sentence written for you.
Yep.
So another little red flag for us as the consultants is when we are told, it's all existing. Maybe it's a yellow flag. I won't call it a red flag. It's a yellow flag because the assumption is I don't want to touch anything. It's all existing, AKA the fee, I hope, that is lower. You don't understand is that usually makes the fee a lot higher for us to even evaluate this. And so engineers need to be better at maybe trying to work somebody through that. Like at that point, I don't think an engineer maybe should be given a proposal. They should just get in there and maybe, I don't know, you kind of need to do a proposal, just say, let me give you $3,000 just to figure out if what you're saying is even feasible.
Yeah, I like we've done this a couple of times where we'll maybe start out with something like $2,000 or $3,000, right? It's like, let me just work up to that amount. Because you're comfortable with that, right? Because nobody likes to agree to a up to X. Like, how much am I really going to be spending? But it's like, look, sign me on for $2,000. Once I get to $2,000 in my billable, I'll stop. I'll report back. If you hate me, or if you hate what I've done, you've only lost $2,000. Chances are you're going to get something out of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that I'm going to solve. I'm not guaranteeing to solve whatever issue you have within that $2,000. I'm saying you're going to be a whole lot closer to understanding it and being able to make a much more educated decision. That's better than spending $10,000, right? When you don't need $10,000. The more we do this, the more folks we talk to are really, really advocating for just having design professionals and trade construction professionals on the job at an hourly rate early on. It's like all the pros of like a design build situation. But if you don't have a GC you trust, that's kind of tough, right? It's a head first dive into a pool, right? That you're not really sure of if you don't have a GC that you trust to do all that. But take $5,000 out of a contingency or whatever it is, whatever you got to do, and just hire somebody hourly. You're going to find out something that you wish you'd have known.
Dream team. This is after today's conversation. I think just the consultants you need is the life safety professional and an architect, a good damn architect and a good damn life safety professional. Those two people,
GC.
a GC, of course. Yeah, good point. I'm assuming at this point maybe there's a GC, but yeah. So the three people, of course, you can always call our MEP nerds or whatever. We do represent about a third of your construction, so it wouldn't hurt. But the reason the architect, GC, and especially that life safety person makes sense is that life safety person is going to be monitoring the kind of decisions, the ideas, and what that might do. That might trigger smoke control. That might trigger sprinkler. That might trigger crazy ass requirements. And he could say, don't store that, or
Yeah.
put it outside in the shed. I mean, that person can help you understand if you're going to need some crazy $50,000 commissioning requirement on some smoke control system, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But they're huge, and that you'll find. By the way, if you're listening in, there's 32 people now, so go ahead and leave us some comments. Let us know what you're thinking. Also, click the link in here and hop in with us and chat and riff if you're in the industry or not in the industry. If you're even interested in it, I mean, there's got to be something we could talk about.
Yeah.
But that life safety person, if you're a developer out there, what you don't realize is your MEP and your architect are in the code world, and there's this giant vacancy of compliance that they are only peripherally related to and only enforce once told by a life safety professional it's eligible. One example is hazardous materials. Now, other professionals may have a different opinion, but generally between other electrical engineers and life safety professionals I've talked to, this is how we see it, that hazardous materials is a function of your consulting with a life safety professional. They're going to ask you questions about what you plan to store, what kind of things, and they're going to determine what category that space is. And there's even firms that just do dust analysis by itself just to figure out if you end up needing to have explosion-proof conduit. So the NEC, the electrical code, will tell us how to deal with it once we know that that's the category. Now, here's where you can get screwed. You think your electrical engineer is in charge of that. They aren't.
Mm-hmm.
They're in charge of making sure once they know it's applicable, how to specify the materials in that space. But we're not going to be determining if it's applicable, but you may think they are. So imagine a universe where you got a distillery, whatever it is, you've built in, roughed in all your conduit, and then you go to inspection. You got to rip it all out.
Yeah.
Who are you going to blame?
Those FARCs, those folks aren't, the life safety folks aren't only important because of what they know. It's more important about when they let people know what they know, because what they know leads to expensive things, right? Important things, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
But it's even more of a problem when you're 6 months into construction and you've already framed up your walls or whatever.
Yeah. I have to show this Mr. Cuddles from my daughter.
Oh yeah, I was thinking that.
Yeah.
What about the other one?
Oh, yeah. This is Jack Noodle
That's a stiff toy there.
and Mr. Cuddles. So this is my daughter's that sent me with these stuffies.
Mr. Noodle? Jack Noodle?
Jack Noodle.
Jack Noodle.
Yeah. There's the larger one. His name is Noodle. And this is Jack Noodle, his little brother. And this is Mr. Cuddles.
Oh,
Riley's.
there's a bigger one.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bigger one.
Cool.
So, yeah, again, if you're tuning in, now we're up to 34. So please join in. You may be camera shy. You can have your camera off. You can audio. Click that link there if you're in LinkedIn or X or Facebook. There's a link here. Once you click it, you can bring it in. You can be on your cell phone, whatever. You don't have to have a podcast studio to join us and riff on this. You could be an architect, a developer, a trade contractor, a GC, a person interested in the industry, a lender, an educator. I mean, anybody in the industry here. We're talking generally do's and don'ts for developers interacting with the trades. We've covered don't ask us to do super cheap engineering without having a limitation of liability. Don't expect it to be cheaper for us to engineer something if you're going to reuse a bunch, because it's actually very complicated. There we go. We got somebody here.
That's me. I want to just
Oh, there we go.
do a
All right.
behind the scenes.
Oh, here we go.
Everybody, what we got?
Here, you mute yourself. Here, I'll mute you and bring you in. There you go. Here we go. There's Carter's.
This is how the sausage is made.
Yeah, look at that. Here we are. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see from this setup, we are engineers trying to pretend like we know how the heck to make a podcast studio. Here we are in Louisville. Love that. We are sold on this Airbnb from that sweet little bluegrass thing back there behind Carter.
Yeah, sorry if I'm making you guys sick moving this thing around a lot.
Yeah. See
That's
how
what we
Carter
got.
just came in? That's how you can join. If you click the link, hop in. We can bring you on. You can walk on your cell phone like Austin was yesterday. He was on the construction site, live from his construction site. But there's our. Here I am. Look at that. I got Jack Noodle chilling with me. So, yeah, it's 36 of y'all just sitting there chilling, quiet. Hey, look, if you disagree with us too, let us know, because we're just saying what we think, and our perspective is limited as MEP engineers. It's our business, so we have our perspective.
Yeah.
Another red flag we brought up, or a don't be cool with pay when paid.
Yeah.
I mean, we get it. I only get it to the extent that, look, if I'm an architect if you're an architect listening, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm trying to put myself in your situation. You're being asked to be the prime. You're being asked to take on all this risk and provide you do all the sub consulting. You get yelled at even if you forget to think of which sub consultant, like a life safety person, right? You said all this risk, all this pressure, and you're probably being squeezed on fee on top of that. And so you're trying to run your business, and a part of that is that you need to do this, hire these trades. Well, it's not like you end up with, you have 150 grand just of liquidity, maybe depending on the size of your firm, some smaller firm, just sitting there ready to pay all the trades. Not everybody does.
Yeah.
You might literally have $10,000 in your bank account if you're a solo practitioner, and you've been asked to just subcontract $150,000 of services or something for a project. Well, then in that case, I could see why you might be encouraged as an industry. Hello? Oh, it's a dog.
Yeah.
To support pay when paid, because otherwise, how are you going to get your business off the ground? Well, sure, but what about all the trades? And the subs that now have to give this unsecured loan? So for us, that's a red flag, and we'd like to at least open that conversation, normalize the idea that that's pretty terrible lending practice. I don't think a bank would make a lot of money or be in business very long if that all of their loans were unsecured.
Interest free.
Yeah, unsecured interest-free loans, that's ridiculous. Meanwhile, your subs that you're hiring are borrowing money to make sure their payroll goes out if there's cash flow pinches, or if they're not getting those checks because there's a delay. If you're their main project for 2 straight months and that's the check we're waiting on, well, then we're going to have to take draws and make sure that our team gets paid. And then that money we pay for that money to be on the line. So, and we can only draw it down once we get paid. So the idea of waiting is kind of crazy. So it seems that if you're going to ask for a $150,000 loan, you should be able to have the credit worthiness of it. And that the industry has blurred the line of credit worthiness mattering is problematic. I think from our perspective, it should matter. Everywhere else in our lives, it matters. Even your insurance rates for your cars is based on your credit score.
Yeah.
So if Geico can charge me more based on like my credit going up or down, then I sure as hell should be able to charge more or less based on who's borrowing from me.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing about renting a space out. I mean, it's a quick way to peek into somebody's life, to see how trustworthy they are.
40 people, hit the link, join us.
I'm going to jump in with a green flag.
All right.
I want to be too negative, Nancy.
Yeah.
Green flag is a collaborative approach to the design. It's different from what I said earlier about being open-minded, but guilty as charged. A lot of times engineers get so deep into the weeds of maybe a specific technical solution that they think is best. And sometimes the question that you, Mr. or Mrs. Developer, think is a stupid question is a really good question, right? And it kind of zooms us out a little bit to big picture look at, okay, that's actually a good idea. I can do something with that, right?
Yeah.
So yes, you're hiring professionals, right? Licensed, regulated, all that, very sharp, creative folks, but don't be scared to jump in there with what you think is a stupid idea, because 90% good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are they're often the best ideas, because your engineers, we are the stereotypes, but we get stuck in the weeds of what we've done before, what we know will work, or what the code says, and it's hard for us to get outside of that box. And somebody who just doesn't even know better, like, hey, this worked, and that, those ideas are game changing. Like, oh shit, you got to remember. Let's talk mechanical. A lot of the solutions for mechanical are not even having to do with mechanical at all. Operable windows.
Yeah.
Look, if you're listening right now and you have a really expensive mechanical budget for whatever reason, and you're freaking out, Ask if you can go for natural ventilation as an option. This applies a lot of times in assembly spaces where you have a lot of people and then the code will require a lot of fresh air. Fresh air is very expensive to deal with. Well, there's a way to get around that by adding windows. So maybe $20,000 of windows that can open and close would be a lot cheaper than $250,000 of DOAS.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can have your engineer look at that and then they can still ventilate the space. They should out of good practice, but they won't have to be bound by the code volumes.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can reduce the ventilation. Also, bipolar ionization is in a way to get engineering ventilation rates down. So these are all ideas that have come to us, but that I didn't invent those ideas. I had other engineers tell me that's how bad engineers are being inventive. So your ideas, to Carter's point, help us stimulate like, okay, wait, could I do that? Because we'll go straight to the little code sections and do a quick analysis and say, oh yeah, totally would have never thought about that.
Yeah.
And it solves the problem. So that proactive approach. A lot of people have been talking about there's really no construction problems in this world that are technical. It's always people.
Mm-hmm.
And when your engineers don't have the best people skills as a group, then it can be difficult to get through some technical solutions.
Yeah.
So that green flag for sure, somebody that's open and comfortable with riffing on some ideas with us. What was another green flag I was thinking about when you're talking about that?
Kind of, I mean, that's a green flag, but at certain times, the opposite of that can be a green flag. It's like just trust your engineer and let him roll with what he thinks best.
Uh-huh.
You know, like we want you to be collaborative. Of course, it's your building, your money, right? Like ask all the questions you want, you know, like absolutely. Trust but verify. Like that's why getting somebody you trust is good because you can kind of just be more on autopilot with it. But when it comes to certain things, just know when to trust your engineer.
Yeah, man, that's true. You can always get a second opinion, but when it comes down to it, if you've studied it, gone down the road,
Yeah.
you're paying an engineer for judgment. That's Ron Smalley from Wiley Wilson, and that's so important. Like it's just like an attorney. You know, you need their judgment and their experience, and you ultimately have to make the final decision. Sometimes the engineer won't allow some things if they're a code violation, but ultimately your engineer is telling you here are your options.
Yeah.
And I really think you should go here. All right, here's a practical example. We had an issue with a project. It was a restaurant, and the lateral for the plumbing was not deep enough. The sanitary pipe that's leaving for this thing wasn't deep enough in the ground. Not only that, about 30 feet out into the parking lot, it was clogged from the grease from the previous tenant, and very shallow in the first place. Well, of course, you know, our drawings showed this connection here. We did ask for the camera and everything, but we were seen as making this mistake. But the reality is your engineers don't measure how deep that pipe is when we do a survey in the light commercial market. So another unrealistic expectation. So, but at the end of the day, the solution could be for us to change the design and add an ejector pump and all these other pieces of mechanical things that are destined to be a nightmare for the owner of the restaurant. A restaurant going through a pump, a mechanical thing. That pump fails one time during peak restaurant hour. It's a nightmare, but that's expensive. Or a way more expensive option is to completely replace the lateral, make it deep the way it should be, deep enough, give it a little bit more slope, knowing that you're going to have a lot of grease discharge, even if it's protected by a grease interceptor. So that's what you should do. That's what we recommend. And sometimes in that situation, engineers are seen as like you're not, the judgment's not being trusted. It's like, well, if I could just buy this pump, why not do that?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, because it's a terrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. It's a really bad idea. Even if it's legal, it's going to be a nightmare. We recommend you put the $70,000 into this new lateral. However, not everybody just has $70,000 to throw at the project. We get that. So we've encouraged our team to just, no matter what pressure you have from a developer or whatever with budgets, always recommend what the best solution is, regardless of what somebody says about the price, because you need to always be on record being like, the real solution is let gravity do its work and fix the fact that this pipe is barely underground. It's going to be a problem for the rest of eternity as long as the pipe is installed that way.
Yeah.
And you can do this other thing. So the judgment there, in that project, it took us a long time to get to that point because we started selling that to people, but we immediately are being pushed back. Like, engineer doesn't know what they're talking about. This is annoying. And it's like, okay, well, we've done a lot of restaurants, so we see this as the solution, but the judgment we missed.
Also, again, engineers are so technical that we want, let's say that, okay, right? In that example you just gave, right, there was 2 solutions, right? It's pretty common to maybe have 3 potential solutions to any given problem we have. What do, right? You're an engineer, you're technical. You want to just dive into the pros and cons of each option, and you get done with your nerd spiel about the 3 options, and the owner's just sitting there like, well, fucking, I mean, that was good information, dork, but what do you think I should do?
Yeah.
Maybe only 5% of them will actually ask that question, right? What do you recommend? Right. And it's our responsibility. And shout out to Ron, you know, people pay us for professional judgment. That's when it hit me was you can explain, or as Kenny likes to do, is mansplain.
Yeah, I can mansplain it.
You can mansplain something all you want, you know, but at the end of the day, they're paying you for your judgment, and you should be able to take the constraints that they've given you and say, this is what I think. Something that I'll steal from Kenny is good. He's been saying is, if it was my money, if it was my building, I'd do it this way, right? I think that goes a long way, because you're actually thinking of, what if this was my money? What if this was my building, right? So as the engineer, maybe other engineers would agree or disagree. I don't know if there's any watching, jump in, but of course, talk through options. Like if you're a developer and you got on a meeting with an engineer and they said, yeah, you should do a 800 amp 480 volt 3-phase service, right? You're gonna say, why? I mean, what the fuck? You know, like, why should I do that, right? If you talk through your options, say, look, we got 2 options, right? One option is you can do a 208 3-phase service. Here's the pros, here's the cons. Another option is you can do a 40 volt 3-phase service. Here's the pros, here's the cons. Now, based on the type of building that you have, based on the size, based on the fact that you got no gas or you're doing electric heat, I'd really recommend a 480 volt service, because a lot of those loads are going to be able to be at the higher voltage. You can keep transformer sizes down. The service size and the bus rating overall is going to be smaller. I'd recommend a 480 volt service in this application, right? That's worth its weight in gold. Just saying that, because the maybe minute and a half long nerdy technical explanation that you went on kind of got you to a point where now they're listening to you in a different way when you give that recommendation.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to get Marilyn. You don't know who I am, Marilyn, but I follow you. I've been following you. I like what you posted today about something about the professional services. Let's see if I can find it if I click on her.
She message you back?
Nah. I don't know if she's read it, or it's dinner time. But she mentioned that, like, in my 2 hours of consulting just saved you $2 million.
Yeah.
Do I get a percentage of that? And that's really what it is, and it's difficult because it's all intangible. We were riffing with Jarnell from Chef Suite, and he's awesome. He totally gets it with the Captivera DOAS and all that. Yeah. But even he was still said during the conversation, like, I want to pay for the DOAS, not like the consulting. Yeah. He's like, even that, it's just, but that consulting leads to the DOAS decision. It's intangible value. It's tangible in the sense that it's a dollar sign for sure as part of the budget. But without somebody who has experience to make the judgment call that this is the equipment you need, then you'll never be able to decide what the equipment is that's necessary. Yeah. And for permit sets, that's basically what you're paying for, is essentially just enough to get the jurisdiction happy that you can start building from it, and just enough to where you understand what the equipment purchase requirements should be. This is the size of this electrical service. This is the kind of distribution you'll need. The overall loads are this, and they tell me that. Then the lighting and occupant sensors and all that. For mechanical, these little pieces of equipment will work. Most of the energy we put into the design on a permit set, I'd say 60 to 70% of the work is just determining what equipment is the right equipment. And then the rest is maybe some meetings here and there, and then boom, we throw ductwork on. In light commercial, that's all I'm speaking to. And multifam is very similar. There's not enough money to pay for more than that. And developers, if you're all listening and you're a developer, you got to normalize the idea that if your underwriting can't afford it, your engineers won't do it, and they shouldn't do it, because you're basically, in order to get that level of design for your ductwork to be that coordinated, just prepare to be paying $4 a square foot for engineering. If your budget is $1 a square foot or less for engineering, you're going to get just enough information to know what you're going to have to purchase, which is still valuable. Yeah. That still lets you know how much this is generally going to cost. But the effort to make sure it gets installed correctly in the right location, coordinated, physically installed, is basically what the 3 times the fee would be. And that's an enormous amount of work. And honestly, it's not really an engineer skill that you need. It's like a draftsman. Somebody knows how to look up a thing a ductulator is literally, you can learn how to use it in one day. if you can learn how to use it in one day, that's not what an engineer does. It takes it takes years, decades of experience to decide the right equipment.
Yeah.
So Marilyn is who I'm hoping I can add on our.
What's that? Every time you say that, it makes me think of the restaurant that people have been telling us to go to.
Oh, Merlin. Yeah.
Should we not? Yeah, whatever.
Merrill's. Yeah.
Merrill's. Maybe they'll
Tonight.
have the lamb chop popsicles.
Oof, yeah.
We're in Louisville. Let us know if lamb chop popsicles is a real thing, because apparently somebody's been messing with us.
I think it is. I think it's what they call the lamb chop when it it's what the lamb chop looks
Maybe
like.
he just thought it. Maybe he just thought it was because he was talking about ribeye steak being in a triangle and folded up like a TP or whatever. I don't know, but
yeah,
gotta get it.
Let's see if I can get Marilyn up in here. But yeah, if you're in here, if you're listening,
Mary.
I don't even know how to spell Marilyn. Yeah, if you're
Don't ask
listening, go ahead and hop in. There's a link in here. You can join. I don't think I'm following her. Join in on the conversation or send a comment here. LinkedIn, Facebook, just leave us a comment because we got the comments in on our screen here. We can see if you have any questions or comments or you disagree with our perspective. It's totally fine. Very, very few people agree with engineers anyway, so we're used to it. We just will say it. We'll say what we think.
Yeah,
and it is our our livelihood. I know it's weird, man. It's very expensive. I get it. It's annoying to have to pay for. I would personally also not like the feeling of having $20,000 of a budget go towards something that's purely invisible. Doesn't feel like it led to anything. But that's what engineers do. Think about it. A mechanical engineer thinks about the amount of water inside of the air and what kind of equipment can remove that water. It also takes the temperature down. But there's a huge part of mechanical engineering that you don't know is going on, and it's that water removal, that humidity stuff. And electrical guys are sitting there in electrons. I mean, they don't even understand what's going on.
Yeah, it's all imaginary. Right? It's like fake.
Yeah.
It's made up.
There's literally in the physics a thing called imaginary numbers that we use for electrical engineering. And that's how imaginary it is that the math literally includes a number that you have to use your imagination.
Embarrassed. They're not embarrassed by it. I just call it what it is, and you just get used to it. And you're like, this is cool. This is literally imaginary.
The square root of -1, if you're a math person, is what we're talking about. That's an imaginary number, and there is no solution to that, but it's used in practical application of math and physics. So that's where your engineers are. So you're already dealing with a weird thing.
A weird person.
I mean, you're paying a lot of money for somebody who decided that they want to make their career out of that really boring stuff. And so at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. Very few people decided.
That's what we're trying to be accessible and be cool. I don't like using the word cool because, it's all subjective, but it's like, if you get an engineer that you can actually talk to, have a conversation with, jump on something like a podcast, a live stream, get a drink with, whatever it is, it's a lot easier to build that relationship. Otherwise, you're with somebody that you can't really have a conversation with. It's hard to build trust that way. They're making these decisions that are costing 6 figures plus, for you and your development. It's just, we're just trying to be accessible, small market where people don't really want, or engineers don't really want these types of jobs.
Call though, that's the tough part.
I wouldn't call.
Yeah, develop that relationship with them for sure. Be on the podcast with us. So like, there's a vibe, there's a way when to text them. Get to that point where what kind of meme your engineer will giggle at. I guess.
Look, I'm just gonna say it. Everybody's probably too scared to say it, but I think you'd agree. Person A calls me. Person B calls me. You can call me. I could be doing the same thing. I might answer person A. I might look at person B, call me, and go, I'll call you later. I'll call you back. Right. Somebody that's going to call me though, I'm going to answer the phone. Right. And that's that relationship. Right. You can't answer the phone for everybody. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely true that if you're an asshole, what do you think I want to answer your phone call for? Jesus Christ. Do you think I want to deal? I mean, just like anybody else, do you think I really want to talk? Especially if you're late on your invoices or you've made demands or it's just like you would do the same thing. I'm not going to answer that call because at the end of the day, unless it's in my contract terms to oblige something professionally, I'm not answering that shit.
I'm sure you're not going to answer if I'm in the middle of something.
Yeah.
I mean, opposite is true though. You get a good client, like, could name off a couple, right? Like Ben, Adam
Matthews. Yep.
Stuart, like
Duke and his team.
Yeah. Duke. Yeah. Adam. Like those are the guys that are like a Kurt, like those are the guys
Jason
that
Hopkins,
Jason.
Design Physics.
Yeah,
Yep.
we could go down the list. We got a lot of good clients. Those are people that are gonna call. I'm gonna call. I'm gonna answer the phone, or I'm gonna hit you with the text, call you back. Right, I'm gonna call you back if I'm actually in a meeting.
Yeah.
Right? I'll call you back within the hour or whatever it is, off work, whatever. Because we value that relationship, right? And I know they do the same thing for me. So.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it is what it is. It's the way. I hope that everybody listening would do the same. Like if you're at a retail, shit. I mean, even if we're a server at a restaurant, somebody's being a dick to you, you should fucking
Oh yeah,
just walk away.
it's that empty cup of water. It's like thirsty.
Yeah.
They
Just
thirsty.
like, fuck that. Nobody deserves to be treated like shit.
Yeah.
And so same thing with professionals. We are dealing with a client right now. That's just every single time email interaction back and forth. It's just constant. Like Jesus. We've been studied game theory. There's this Veritasium. If you follow him on YouTube, has a really good video about game theory, and he talks about when they studied that there's something called tit for tat. They asked in the prisoner's dilemma. You probably are all familiar with it. But the prisoner's dilemma is like me and Carter at the table. We're deciding to defect or not to each other, and rewarded if we both defect or one defects and the other. There's certain rewards to the game. Anyway, the Veritasium video goes over this dilemma that was studied, and they asked a bunch of people to write software how to play the game and what would be the most effective. Long story short, watch the video if you haven't. It's extremely useful if you need to help your team understand how to consult, because it just genuinely has worked well for us. It's tit for tat. What it is to say, look, I'm going to treat you how you treated me last time we were together. But every time I engage, for the first time, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to assume niceness. But if during that nice exchange you're naughty, they called it, which is kind of silly, then I'm going to remember that. And the next time we interact, I'll be mean. I'll be a dick. And if you're nice that time, I'm willing to forgive. So that's the most important part, is that you show somebody you're willing to retaliate, but also to forgive. And that way you set expectations and draw boundaries with your clients that are important. Because, at the end of the day, I'll never let anybody treat my team or myself with no respect or dignity. I mean, fuck you. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely no.
Nobody else is saying that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But at the same time, look, if it was an off day and you were just, in a bad mood, I'm willing to see through that, and just the next time go back to, not holding a grudge. That's what's important with that tit for tat, is that holding grudges are useless in business, especially. But you need to show somebody you're willing to retaliate with them and say, look, if you're going to treat me in a specific way here, I'm going to go straight to how you were. And until you change your behavior, I'm going to be that way with you. Mm-hmm. But I'm also want you to understand that once you change your behavior, I'm down. Like we're back to it. Now, one thing they realized in that study is it's important to understand is that you do need to account for noise. You might interpret somebody being a dick, and they weren't at all.
Yeah.
And talking to you engineers, we're really bad at signals with humans. So you got to bake into noise. And so 1 out of every 10 exchanges, just assume it's your fault that you misunderstood. And that's been helpful for us. Sometimes we get in our heads like, okay, no, whatever, we're going to move past it. Let's assume it and stay nice, because otherwise it gets worse. And if you do those things, tit for tat, with forgiveness, then that so far has been really good for us. It's weeded out our bad clients and made our good clients understand we have good boundaries that are healthy for any professional to have, and we're ready to be a team player. Sometimes you have an off day that happens. So, I guess that's one way for us to deal with those red flags that come our way. So we have 50 people now. I can't believe that out of this many people, there's nobody wanting to hop in and riff with us.
It's been about an hour or two.
Yeah. So we're about to go get that catfish from Merrill's here.
Lamb chop popsicles and collard greens and mac and cheese. Yeah. Don't let me start rapping.
Oh yeah, Carter has a rap. We'll have to we'll show y'all. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and don't forget there's links in there for y'all to click and join in, and you can become a guest, and we could talk about how do you deal with the red flags in your industry. How do you deal with red flags from MEP? I really want to know what they are. Maybe it's half the shit we said. I don't know. But what makes a red flag for engineer? How do you know how to trust that person? I mean, look, here's the reality. You're trying to get this construction up off the ground. There's a very few engineers you could choose from, and you got $30,000 to $50,000 fees. What a crazy thing to have to decide. Unless you've been doing it for a while.
Oh, we're frozen.
Oh, we're back.
Okay.
So to decide $50,000 fee I'm going to commit to this person's relationship from entirety of my construction.
Mhm.
I mean, at least with a car, you can do a test drive and return it or sell it if you don't like it.
Yeah.
With an engineer, you're wrapped up for your project. And if halfway through you realize that's not a good decision or you don't like where this is going or you're concerned, then what do you do? And so if you're an architect, a GC, or a developer and you've hired engineers or even any professional services, what are your green flags? What are your red flags? You know, how do you know when you go through the process? How do you vet these professionals? There's a limited supply in any given city.
Yeah.
You know?
I think getting them hourly is it's a good middle ground.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I can't think of a single scenario where we didn't maybe get somebody that was interested in doing some hourly and it didn't turn into something more, you know,
Mhm.
just really trying to be helpful, you know, get in there. Yeah. So that's a good middle ground, right? Cause like you can't expect no skin in the game from your part as a developer, right? You also don't want to authorize a full blown $50,000 contract or just like, how do you get a feel for this person, right? Are they going to be easy to work with? I mean, shit, the job that we just had recently, you know, as a developer that's with another engineering firm that it would make more financial sense for them to continue working with this engineering firm, but they didn't want to. It was just a burnt bridge with a relationship. And who knows what it was. I didn't get into the details, but it could have been just as something as simple as, I don't know, we just didn't communicate well, right?
Yeah.
So it's important.
Yep. So 50 people here right now listening to these
52.
56 on Twitter. So like, you know, y'all are there and we are here. So ask us questions. Ask us anything. We're MEP engineers. I'm Kenny. I'm a mechanical engineer, licensed professional engineer. Carter is a electrical licensed professional engineer. Otherwise, if not, we don't get any questions or people hop in with us, we're going to hop off here ourselves, maybe get some dinner.
Yeah.
We're in Louisville. If you're around, want to get dinner with us.
Yeah. Hit us up.
Yeah, we'll be heading downtown to the waterfront, waterside area, whatever it's called.
Chow City or what?
I don't know. There's that Chow Town thing for
Downtown.
the Derby
Yeah.
going on, I guess. So we're not too familiar with it, but yeah, those red flags, man, are what we wanted to share with y'all. Hoping to get a little bit more engagement, but as we get more followers on X, I think a lot of our friends will become more comfortable. The way Austin jumped in, that was awesome yesterday. And just encourage the communication. That's what I love about this community in general on X. I know we're new to here, so y'all may not know who we are, but we want to participate the way we see y'all participating with each other and just contribute to the conversation of commercial real estate. We're the MEP side. I mean, again, we are 1/3 of the cost, so we are a resource here on Twitter to try to talk about that. Plus, we have, you know, we'll do this later, but we also have experience in the subsidiary company infrastructure since we own a subsidiary in India, and we can have a separate little live where we answer questions about that. We've been doing that for 10 years, so we've really been in and out of those laws and the different cultural challenges that we have run into.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to talk about that. But anyhow, so I think we're about to wrap. We got 49. We broke 50 at one point. But thanks for everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. 1.5 hours long.
Yeah.
I can't believe y'all stuck with us. But let us know. Tag us. Hit us on the DM on Twitter. Carter is the BPT.
No, just BPT Carter.
BPT Carter.
Yeah.
And I'm Blueprint Tour, at Blueprint Tour. And our company is at Permit CIP.
Mm-hmm.
So hit us on the DMs. Add us, whatever, if you want us to riff something.
Yeah, roast us. I want to do an MEP engineer, green flag, red flag.
Yeah. Or, you know, if you want us to be on something you guys are doing live and just hop in as an engineer, consultant. We're just trying to figure out a way to be contributing to the community and be useful for everybody to help make the industry better. And we appreciate y'all tuning in. People, holy moly, how do we jump up to 60? Well, look, we got about 10 more people just randomly here. So if you're here tuning in before we log in, there's a link in here if you want to jump in.
It's been 60 for a while.
It has
a couple minutes at least.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought it was 50. Maybe my eyes need to be fixed. All right, in that case, we're going to hop off. So we'll see y'all next time. We appreciate y'all's paying attention to our nerdy stuff.
All right, see y'all.
Later.